Why was Meghan Markle quietly denied access to one of the royal family's most prized heirlooms, while Zara Tindall gifted that very same treasure to Catherine Middleton in a velvet-lined box behind closed palace doors? That's not just a question. It's a warning shot in pearl form. Because in the House of Windsor, jewels don't just sparkle, they speak. And this one, it screamed allegiance, loyalty, and quiet rejection. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. A single gesture, one necklace, two women, and a royal world caught in the crossfire. Let's unpack this explosive saga that's been smoldering beneath the surface of royal civility. A story where elegance clashes with entitlement, where family tradition collides with modern ambition, and where a woman who never wanted a title, Zara Tindall, may have just made the most defining move in the ongoing royal drama. But first, you have to understand something. This wasn't just a gift. It was a declaration. And it came at a time when the royal family could barely keep their gloves on behind the palace gates. A royal chess game with velvet gloves. Think about it. Why would Zara Tindall, an Olympic medalist, a royal by blood but not by title, choose now of all times to gift Catherine, the Princess of Wales, one of the Queen Mother's most historically treasured jewelry pieces? And why, just days later, did Meghan Markle make a quiet but urgent request to borrow a royal heirloom, only to be shut down like a cold call on a Sunday? Coincidence? Not likely, especially when the pearl set in question has a shadowy history of power plays and family feuds, going back nearly a century to the original royal rebel, Wallis Simpson. Yes, that Wallis. The one who made a king choose love over crown, leaving the monarchy permanently changed. And here's where things get eerily poetic. Meghan Markle has often been compared to Wallis. Too often. And now, she's asking for the very pearls the Queen Mother once kept locked away from that woman. See where this is going, why it matters now, and why people are talking. This isn't just about pearls and palaces. It's about power, symbolism, and the tension between tradition and disruption. With King Charles facing his own health battles, the future of the monarchy has never been more fragile. And in that fragile landscape, every gesture carries 10 times its weight. Every glance, every whisper, every velvet box. Catherine has slowly emerged as the steel core of the modern royal family, measured, beloved, and increasingly strategic. And Zara? She's the one person in the family who's walked both worlds. Half in, half out. No title, no PR firm, no Netflix contract. Just bloodline, legacy, and grit. And then there's Meghan, still holding court in California, still craving acknowledgement, still sending signals through stylists, interviews, and yes, strategic jewelry choices. So when Meghan allegedly made that infamous loan request, believing she could borrow from the crown jewels to represent the family on the global stage, it wasn't just awkward timing. It was an earthquake. Because that same week, Catherine was photographed stepping out in the very pearls Meghan was denied. Publicly dazzling, privately explosive, what the palace never said aloud, but everyone heard. Now, the palace won't confirm a thing. They never do. But the whispers say more than the press releases ever will. Sources close to the family suggest this wasn't just Catherine's choice. It was orchestrated by Zara, with the full understanding of what it would represent. A visual line in the sand. A coded message Meghan would absolutely understand. You are not one of us. No direct confrontation, no public feud, just pearls and a powerful silence. And perhaps the most shocking twist? This isn't the first time Meghan has tried to get her hands on royal heirlooms. This is merely the latest chapter in a long pattern of quiet requests, royal side-eyes, and firm denials. We'll be unpacking that history very soon. But first, the velvet box and the note that said it all. Sources allege Zara's gift to Catherine came wrapped not just in heritage, but in message. A note, handwritten, simple, barely a sentence. And that note? It said more than any interview could. It referenced loyalty, sisterhood, and protection of legacy. No PR spin, no camera crew, just truth. Between two women bound by blood and duty, and united by a common frustration with what they see as a royal threat. You can feel the emotional gravity of the moment if you pause and imagine it. Catherine, alone in a private room at Highgrove, opening a modest box that contained a century of royal memory, a necklace that had adorned queens, a symbol of matriarchal power, and next to it, a note from Zara, her cousin-in-law, her confidant, her shield. Was it beautiful? Yes. But more than that, it was a statement. And now the world's starting to hear it. But why did Meghan think she could ask? That's where this story takes a sharp turn. Because Meghan's side of the saga paints an entirely different picture. One of a woman trying to step into the royal spotlight, trying to connect to the family's legacy, trying to honor the Queen's memory abroad in a planned public appearance. Except the people closest to the Queen said otherwise. And when Meghan's formal email, yes, it was allegedly an email, landed in royal inboxes asking for a specific pearl piece to wear at a private event, let's just say the response was swift. And it wasn't just no. It was a very deliberate no. A response that echoed with the subtle but unmistakable tone of, "You've already taken too much." Now, most families would have a shouting match, maybe a group text explosion, but not the Windsors. They respond through optics, through history, through unspoken codes and well-timed appearances. And they have Zara to do the dirty work. Which brings us to the bigger picture. This moment, this clash over pearls, isn't isolated. It's the latest in a string of simmering tensions that began long before Oprah, before Spotify, before the Netflix deals, before the Frogmore eviction. It goes back to the unspoken war for legacy and the power struggles behind the scenes, where jewelry isn't just fashion. It's a crown. It's a weapon. It's history. And Zara Tindall? She may be the quietest player on the royal board, but she just moved a queen. The real question is, who's next to move? Because Meghan's not done. Not even close. Rumors are already swirling about how she plans to respond through fashion and media appearances. And Catherine, she's not taking the bait. She doesn't need to. She already wore the pearls. That was the response. But Zara, she's not done either. In fact, what she does next may be even bolder. Because insiders claim she has a plan for those pearls. One that reaches beyond Catherine. One that includes the next royal generation. One that could redefine who really carries the Queen Mother's legacy. And what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. What makes a simple strand of pearls so dangerous, so powerful, that it can divide a family, topple alliances, and silence even the loudest voices in the palace? The answer lies not in the jewels themselves, but in who wore them, and who never got the chance. This is the story of that necklace, the Queen Mother's pearl set. An heirloom so quietly potent, it has never needed a press release to make headlines. It speaks through appearances, through choices, through silences. And when Zara Tindall handed it to Catherine, she was doing far more than passing along jewelry. She was handing her the weight of a legacy. But to understand the full gravity of that moment, we have to go back. Not just a few years, not just to Meghan. We need to rewind nearly a century. To the woman who first made pearls a weapon in the royal arsenal. The Queen Mother, a smile like steel, a necklace like armor. Born Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the Queen Mother was never meant to be queen. And yet, that's exactly what made her reign so unshakable. She didn't ascend through ambition. She was thrust into power. After the abdication crisis that shattered the monarchy's confidence, it was Elizabeth, resilient, calm, charming, who steadied the ship beside her stuttering husband, King George VI. But her true power wasn't political. It was symbolic. She understood optics better than any spin doctor. And she knew when to smile and when not to. So when she wore pearls, she wasn't just completing an outfit. She was sending a message. I am the mother of the nation. I do not yield. One pearl strand in particular, a softly lustrous 3-row choker with a diamond clasp, became her signature. She wore it to weddings, to wartime tours, to royal births and burials. Even during the Blitz, when London was burning, she insisted on dressing in her finest. Not out of vanity, but out of defiance. If the people must suffer, I must stand with them. In dignity. That necklace saw it all. And after her death, it passed into royal storage. Silent, yes, but not forgotten. Because that set wasn't just beautiful. It had memory. And rules. Rules that were never spoken out loud. But Meghan Markle would discover them the hard way. The unwritten law of royal heirlooms. Inside the royal vaults, where priceless tiaras, brooches, and necklaces sleep in velvet darkness. There exists a silent hierarchy. Not all jewels are created equal. Some sparkle for anyone. Others are reserved. Reserved for those who understand the crown, who protect it, who serve it. The Queen Mother's pearl set fell into the latter category. It wasn't loaned. It wasn't shared. It was bestowed. Quietly. Carefully. And only to those who had proven themselves. When Queen Elizabeth II inherited her mother's vast jewelry collection, she made few changes. She simply preserved the rules. She gave Catherine pieces early in her marriage, small at first, then bolder as her loyalty proved unshakable. The sapphire and diamond necklace. The Cambridge lover's knot tiara. But the Queen Mother's pearls? Those remained untouched. Until Zara asked for them. Wait, Zara. Why Zara? That's the part the public never saw coming. Zara Tindall, daughter of Princess Anne, never wanted a royal title. She married a rugby star. She raised her kids outside the traditional palace grind. No security detail. No balcony appearances. No pressure. And yet, she was always in it. Trusted. Respected. Quietly watching everything. She grew up riding horses with the Queen, trading sarcasm with Prince Philip, and, in time, building an unlikely bond with Catherine. So when Queen Elizabeth passed, and Charles began sorting the impossible puzzle of royal inheritance, Zara didn't ask for land, or titles, or castles. She asked for one thing: the pearls. A deal made in silence. It said that Zara approached King Charles directly, not with entitlement, but with reverence. Not for herself, for Catherine. It was during one of the private family weekends at Sandringham. The press thought it was a casual gathering, but insiders suggest otherwise. Zara allegedly pulled Charles aside and said, "She's earned it. Let her wear what Gran wore with pride." And Charles, still navigating the emotional weight of losing his mother, still adjusting to his own reign, didn't argue. Because he knew. Zara wasn't talking about jewelry. She was talking about legacy. And that's when the velvet box was passed to her. Quietly, without announcement. No media leaks. No social media fanfare. Just a simple, silent transaction between father, niece, and memory. But why didn't Catherine receive them directly from the palace? Here's the twist. She did, but not in the way anyone expected. Catherine didn't know it was coming. That's what made the moment so powerful. According to palace staffers who spoke anonymously, Zara didn't hand the pearls over in a formal setting. There was no security team hovering. No royal assistants taking inventory. It happened at Highgrove, during an unpublicized dinner with only close family. After dessert, Zara reportedly slipped the box into Catherine's hands, leaned in, and said just 3 words. Gran would approve. Inside the box, the Queen Mother's iconic 3-strand pearl necklace. And a note, handwritten, not long, not emotional, but potent, for the one who kept her head when others lost theirs. Wear this when you must remind them who you are. It was both a gift and a warning. Both a celebration and a challenge. And Catherine, she understood immediately. Because just days later, Meghan Markle would make a move that would reopen royal wounds that many thought had healed. A request. A quiet, formal ask to borrow a different pearl set. One that once belonged to the Queen Mother. Yes, but more publicly worn by Queen Elizabeth II. The intent? To wear them at a global women's conference in California. A symbolic gesture, Meghan's camp claimed, to honor royal legacy in a new world. The reaction? Frozen silence. No pearls. No reply. No loan. Just nothing. But inside the palace walls, that silence spoke louder than any public statement. The curse of Wallace, and why the pearls were always political. Now here's where history repeats itself. Back in the 1930s, when King Edward VIII abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson, the Queen Mother never forgave him, or her. And when Wallis asked, more than once, to borrow or wear certain pieces from the royal collection, she was denied. Every time. The Queen Mother reportedly referred to her as that woman until her dying day. She didn't just block the jewels. She blocked the access. And some say the Queen Mother even specified in writing that certain pieces were never to be worn by anyone who did not uphold the values of the crown. Whether that clause holds legal weight is unclear. But emotionally, symbolically, it held everything. So when Meghan, divorced, American, outspoken, and often compared to Wallace, requested access to one of those heirlooms. You can guess what happened next. But Meghan didn't back down. She never does. Sources say that after her initial request was met with silence, her team sent a polite follow-up. This time, the justification was stronger. Meghan would like to honor the Queen Mother's humanitarian legacy, and wearing her pearls would be a symbol of shared values. The problem? Inside the palace, no one was buying it. Because the Queen Mother didn't just leave behind pearls. She left behind rules, traditions, lines not to be crossed. And Meghan had already crossed too many. Zara knew this. And so, when she gave Catherine the pearls, without fanfare, without spectacle, it was a silent closing of a door. A velvet-wrapped message. Only one of us will wear them. And it's not her. And yet, one question remains. Why now? Why did Zara choose this moment to make that move? Was it a personal gesture? A strategic one? A warning? Or perhaps a quiet beginning of a new royal alliance? Because what comes next isn't just about pearls. It's about what Catherine does with them. And the storm that's about to follow is far bigger than anyone predicted. What happens when the wrong person wears royal power? And what happens when the right person finally does? Catherine stepped out, not onto a grand stage, not into a Buckingham balcony moment, just a quiet charity dinner in London, low-key, untelevised, attended by a select few. But the pearls? They roared. 3 strands of softly glowing heritage, hugging the curve of her neck, nestled against a high-collared ivory gown that seemed almost designed to whisper, "I don't need to shout to be seen." No royal stylist issued a statement. No Instagram story tagged the designer. And yet, the photos exploded across social media within hours. Royal watchers knew immediately. Those weren't just pearls. Those were the pearls. The Queen Mother's pearls. And the world reacted accordingly. From symbol to signal, the internet's reaction. Within minutes, comparisons flooded timelines. Old black and white images of the Queen Mother during the Blitz. Queen Elizabeth II at her silver jubilee. And now Catherine, smiling that signature soft smile, hands gently clasped, the pearls gleaming under soft light. One user tweeted, "She's not just wearing jewelry. She's wearing the monarchy." Another, "Zara just knighted Catherine with pearls." That's what just happened. But Meghan's fans weren't quiet either. They noticed something too. That just days earlier, Meghan had been photographed at a separate women's leadership event in Los Angeles, wearing, you guessed it, pearls. They weren't the same, but the timing was. And in the royal world, timing is everything. The subtle war of appearances. See, this isn't just a story of who owns what. It's about who is seen doing what and when. Catherine, stepping into legacy. Meghan, crafting a modern brand of royalty stateside. But here's the tension that exploded behind the scenes. Meghan's pearls, while luxurious, were immediately interpreted by royal insiders as a deliberate counterplay, not a tribute, a challenge. Royal sources, speaking strictly off record, confirmed what many suspected. There was no way Meghan's team didn't know Zara had just handed over the Queen Mother's pearls. So when Meghan showed up in an elegant white dress, her own pearls gleaming, reportedly from a private jeweler in New York, the message was clear. Or at least intended to be. But rather than elevate, it backfired. The side-by-side that changed everything. 2 images. Side by side. Catherine in London. Meghan in LA. Both wearing white. Both wearing pearls. And the captions wrote themselves. The rightful heir versus the Hollywood exile. Legacy doesn't need PR. It just walks in and commands the room. Even neutral outlets couldn't help but highlight the optical tension. For Meghan, it was supposed to be a moment of tribute. But for the public, and for the royals, it came across as mimicry. And nothing insults the royal family more than imitation without invitation. The ghost of Wallace rises again. Let's be blunt. The comparison between Meghan Markle and Wallis Simpson isn't new. But now it had teeth. Because Wallis, too, tried to replicate royal elegance after her exile. She wore French couture. She wore tiaras gifted by Edward. She hosted glittering parties in Paris. But she never shook the shadow of rejection. And now, Meghan found herself, whether fairly or not, in the same precarious space. Always on the outside, looking in. Always mimicking, never inheriting. Except this time. The monarchy wasn't staying silent. Because Zara had moved. And Catherine had answered. With pearls. What the pearls represent today. To the average person, pearls are a symbol of grace, of quiet strength, of classic femininity. But in the royal context, there's so much more. Pearls are worn during mourning and during coronations. They're worn when diplomacy is required and when emotions must be buried beneath poise. The Queen Mother wore them to broadcast stability. Elizabeth wore them to exude calm authority. And Catherine now wears them to anchor the monarchy's future in its past. She's not just stepping into role. She's earning it, one strand at a time. Why Zara chose Catherine over everyone else? Here's where it gets personal. Zara had options. She could have kept the pearls in a vault. She could have handed them down to her own daughters. She could have even sold them quietly, and no one outside the royal circle would have known. But she didn't. She chose Catherine. Why? Because Catherine stayed. She weathered the storms, the headlines, the whisper campaigns. She showed up at hospital visits when she was clearly unwell. She walked beside the Queen's coffin with composure, even while grieving. She didn't write memoirs. She didn't give interviews. She didn't launch podcasts. She just served. And Zara? She saw that. More importantly, she respected it. In the words of one insider, Zara's always been about action, not words. And Catherine? She's all action. But there's one more layer to this gift. One no one's talking about. Not yet. Because according to one royal source close to Zara, the pearls aren't just a gift for Catherine's present. They're a test run, a trial, to see how the public reacts, to see how the family responds, to see if Catherine can carry their weight, not just symbolically, but emotionally. And if she can, then there's another rumor floating around, quietly, of course, that Zara may be planning to petition King Charles to have the pearls designated as a permanent family heirloom, to be passed from queen to queen, beginning with Catherine, then to Princess Charlotte. A new tradition, built not on entitlement, but on merit, which raises a dangerous question. What happens to the women who don't get included? Because if royal inheritance becomes about earned trust, not just bloodlines or wedding rings, then where does that leave Meghan, or even Eugenie? Or any woman who married in but failed to meet Zara's standard? The Queen Mother's pearls are no longer just a relic. They're a weapon. And whoever wears them next will inherit not just beauty, but burden. Because behind those delicate white spheres lies power. And power, in the royal family, never goes unchallenged. And what came next, no one was prepared for. What do you get when you throw a commoner into the most elite family in the world? And her most loyal protector turns out to be the one woman who never wanted a royal title? Catherine Middleton and Zara Tindall were never meant to be allies. At least, not on paper. Different worlds, different upbringings, different expectations. One was groomed, unofficially but relentlessly, for queenship. The other, raised in royal blood but deliberately kept outside the gold-trimmed cage. And yet, over the years, something strange and powerful happened. A bond. Not forged in tabloids or ceremonies, but in looks, gestures, and unspoken support. They became each other's shadow armor. But it didn't start that way. The awkward beginning. Let's rewind to 2005. William and Kate had rekindled their on-again, off-again university romance. Paparazzi stalked Kate through Chelsea. The Middleton family was being picked apart for their middle-class roots, their party supply business, and worst of all, their normalcy. Zara? She watched it all from a distance. She knew the game. She'd seen it play out with Fergie, with Diana, even with herself. She knew exactly how brutal the firm could be to outsiders. So it's no surprise that, early on, Zara kept her distance. Not out of malice, but out of caution. According to one former royal aide, Zara always liked Kate, but she also thought, privately, let's see if she lasts. Because the royal orbit has a high turnover rate. Girlfriends come and go. Fiancés get cold feet. Even wives don't always stay. So Zara watched, waited, and then she noticed something different. The polo match that changed everything. It was summer 2008. A charity polo match in Gloucestershire. William was playing. Kate was in attendance. The press was swarming. Zara, freshly married to Mike Tindall, was there with her usual no-nonsense energy. Boots on, sunglasses perched, arms crossed. And she watched as Kate navigated the crowd, not with starry-eyed awe, but with strategic grace. A royal girlfriend might pose. Smile. Preen. Kate. She walked over to the tent housing the elderly veterans, shook their hands, stayed for 15 minutes, then slipped away without a single photographer catching it. Zara saw it, and in that moment, something clicked. She's not playing dress up, Zara reportedly told her mother, Princess Anne. She's already wearing the crown. They just haven't put it on her yet. From that point on, Zara's attitude shifted. Not overt, not dramatic, but deliberate. She started inviting Kate to more informal royal events. Family lunches, horse trials, quiet weekends at Gackham Park, away from the cameras, away from the scrutiny, where real trust is built. The day of the crying baby. But the real turning point? That came years later. It was the christening of Princess Charlotte in 2015. The press focused on the photos, the matching ensembles, the smiles. But behind the scenes, Zara witnessed a moment that would stay with her forever. Charlotte had been fussy, screaming, refusing the bottle. Kate, dressed head to toe in ivory, pearls glinting in the sun, took her daughter into a quiet side room of the church. Zara followed to check on her. And what she saw? Not a princess, not a duchess, just a young mother, crying, whispering, holding her baby close. No nannies, no staff, just her. Zara didn't say anything. She just sat down beside her, handed her a tissue, and said, "Welcome to the club." From that moment on, they weren't just royal women. They were mothers, survivors of the same strange world, and, quietly, sisters. But it wasn't all warmth and bonding. Make no mistake, Zara is Anne's daughter through and through. Blunt, sharp, loyal to the crown above all else. And when Meghan entered the picture, Zara's instincts flared. She didn't hide it, didn't fake smiles. At the 2018 Christmas service at Sandringham, photographers captured a moment that set the internet ablaze. As the royals walked together, Kate, William, Harry, and Meghan, Zara trailed behind with Mike. A photographer snapped a shot of Zara glaring right at Meghan. People speculated. Tabloids guessed. But insiders claimed Zara had just watched Meghan nudge past Kate on the church steps, taking the center position in photos. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. But to someone who knew royal choreography, it was an act of war. And Zara? She doesn't do passive aggression. She does action. From that day forward, she closed ranks. And Catherine was now on the inside, the quiet defender. Catherine is known for restraint. Zara is known for retaliation. When Meghan and Harry left the royal family and launched their media campaign, Catherine stayed silent. But Zara? She started showing up. At every charity event with Kate, every garden party, every royal christening. Always nearby, always visible. Not as a bodyguard, but as a signal that Catherine was not alone. That the family stood with her. That Meghan hadn't cracked the code. And it worked. Public sentiment swayed. Royal popularity polls soared for Catherine. And Zara? She became the unspoken enforcer. No interviews. No documentaries. Just presence. When the Queen fell ill, Zara took charge. In 2021, Queen Elizabeth's health took a private dip, well before the public ever found out. During one weekend at Balmoral, a limited circle was invited. Zara was among them. So was Catherine. And according to palace insiders, something rare occurred. The Queen asked to see both women. Alone. The three reportedly spent hours in a drawing room. No staff, no press, just legacy, transition, and memory. Afterward, as Catherine was preparing to leave, Zara allegedly pulled her aside and said, "You're not just the future, you're the glue." And Catherine, who rarely shows emotion, reportedly teared up. They weren't just relatives now. They were allies. Arm in arm in a battlefield filled with microphones and backstabs. The gift before the gift. Before Zara ever handed Catherine the Queen Mother's pearls, she gave her something else. Her silence. In royal life, silence is currency. And Zara could have sold a dozen stories to tabloids over the years. Moments, comments, insider drama. But she never did. Even when Meghan allegedly asked her directly, "Do you think Kate ever liked me?" Zara refused to answer. Why? Because she knew. Every time she said nothing, she was protecting someone. And that someone was Catherine. But then came the gift that couldn't be ignored. It was nearing the anniversary of Queen Elizabeth's passing. Tensions were high. Meghan was rumored to be planning a surprise appearance in the UK. Catherine was under immense pressure. Charles was traveling. William was busy with diplomatic engagements. And Zara? She saw the gap. She knew the family needed a moment, a signal, not a press release, not a headline, a gesture. So she made the call, to the vault, to the king, to the memory of the Queen Mother. And that's when she made her choice, to gift the pearls, to Catherine, not just as jewelry, but as legacy, as armor, as a sign to the world that Catherine wasn't just holding on, she was taking over. But what came next would shake the walls of royal silence once again. What does it mean when a woman with no title makes the loudest move in the monarchy? And the future queen answers without saying a word? Zara Tindall had always known how to play the long game. Not through press, not through pity, but through action. So when she placed that velvet-lined box into Catherine's hands, she wasn't just making a statement. She was rewriting the rules. But make no mistake, Zara knew the risks. Because in the royal family, every move is dissected, every silence analyzed, every gift questioned. And this gift, this very specific heirloom from the Queen Mother, it was bound to provoke one person in particular, Meghan Markle. The moment Meghan found out, here's where it gets icy. Sources close to the palace say the news of Catherine receiving the Queen Mother's pearls didn't leak immediately. There was no public announcement, no Instagram post, no media sources, just a quiet appearance by Catherine at a charity event for children's mental health, where she wore a cream blouse, her hair swept into a low bun, and the pearls, the same ones seen in black and white photos of the Queen Mother beside Winston Churchill. The same pearls Wallace Simpson was never allowed to touch. The same pearls Meghan allegedly asked to borrow for a UN-themed women's summit in New York City. And just like that, the comparisons started flying. Side by sides. Think pieces. TikToks. But for Meghan, the dagger wasn't the press coverage. It was how she found out. According to a friend close to the Sussex circle, Meghan's stylist sent her the image via WhatsApp with a single message. They gave her those pearls. And Meghan? She reportedly responded with one word. Wow. No emoji. No laughter. Just that. Because she understood immediately what that meant. She wasn't just excluded. She was intentionally excluded. Catherine's reaction and her reluctance. What many don't know is that Catherine didn't immediately say yes. When Zara gave her the pearls, Catherine hesitated. Not because she didn't want them, but because she knew the storm they would bring. She'd spent years avoiding conflict, dodging traps, choosing the high road when others dragged her through the mud. But Zara? She told her something that shifted everything. It's not about you, Kate. It's about her. She keeps pushing. Time we showed her you're not alone. Catherine reportedly said nothing in return, just held the box. Looked down at it for a long moment, and then smiled. The kind of smile the Queen Mother used to wear. The one that said, "You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." The power of female alliances in the palace. Historically, the royal family has been defined by the men. Kings, princes, swords, and thrones. But the real power? It's always lived in the hands of the women. The Queen Mother during World War II. Queen Elizabeth II's 70-year reign. Princess Anne's unwavering duty. And now? A new triad was forming. Zara, Catherine, and, believe it or not, Princess Charlotte, watching it all unfold. Because this wasn't just about now. It was about the future. Zara understood something Meghan didn't. Legacy isn't taken. It's guarded. And Zara had just placed the keys into Catherine's hands. A family divided. Who took sides? Once word spread that Catherine had been given the pearls, lines began to form behind the scenes. Princess Anne, ever the stoic matriarch, was reportedly pleased by Zara's decision. Zara's always known what matters, and allegedly told a senior aide. Prince Edward, meanwhile, remained neutral, torn between his loyalty to the institution and his discomfort with anything that hinted at exclusion. Camilla? She kept her distance, publicly supportive of Catherine, privately wary of reopening old wounds with Harry and Meghan. But the most surprising reaction? Prince William. He didn't say much, of course, but after Catherine wore the pearls publicly, he was reportedly overheard telling a royal staffer. Mum would have smiled. Gran definitely would have approved. A reference, of course, to both Princess Diana and the Queen. Two women who, though vastly different, understood the emotional weight of what women in the family must carry. And for Catherine, that weight now hung around her neck, soft, silent, and powerful. But behind the smiles, Zara was planning something bigger. The gift of the pearls was just the beginning. Insiders say Zara had a broader strategy in mind. Because while the gift was symbolic, the next step would be institutional. She wanted to make Catherine the public heir to the Queen Mother's legacy, not just in jewels, but in duty. A return to elegance, to quiet power, to the kind of monarchy that doesn't clap back, but outlasts. To that end, Zara began quietly organizing something new, a tribute event. A multi-generational royal charity gala in the Queen Mother's name, hosted by Catherine, backed by Princess Anne, with Zara herself handling the behind-the-scenes planning. The goal? To solidify Catherine's status, not as the wife of the heir to the throne, but as the next matriarch. And who wasn't invited? You can guess. The invitation that never came. When Meghan caught wind of the planned gala, months ahead, still hush-hush, her team allegedly sent a polite inquiry to the palace. A suggestion that perhaps Meghan could participate remotely, or offer a pre-recorded tribute in memory of the Queen Mother. The reply was brief, polite, and clear. Thank you for your interest. At this time, the event is focused on active members of the royal family and direct descendants of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. Translation? No. And once again, it was Zara's fingerprints all over it. Not cruel, not personal, just boundaries, enforced with precision. And Catherine? She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The pearls did all the talking. And now, eyes turn to Charlotte. Because here's the final twist in this quiet royal coup. It wasn't just about Catherine. Insiders claim Zara's long game may involve passing the Queen Mother's legacy even further to Princess Charlotte. In fact, the gala being planned includes a moment where Charlotte may appear beside her mother, wearing a single pearl hairpin said to have belonged to the Queen Mother's private collection. One pin, one child, one future queen, in training. It's subtle, but seismic. Because Meghan's daughter, Lilibet, bears the Queen's name. But Charlotte? Charlotte is now being raised in the Queen's mold. Through pearls, through posture, through protection. And Meghan? She can watch. She can wear similar looks. She can give speeches. But without the crown's blessing, they're just performances. Because in the end, true legacy isn't given. It's guarded. And Catherine now holds the key. But the next chapter in this drama would take things even deeper. Because Meghan wasn't done. And what she did next would push Zara into a position she never asked for. But one she was born to occupy. What drives a woman to ask for the one thing she knows she'll be denied? Not once, not twice, but again and again. Pearls, tiaras, brooches, more than accessories. These were keys to legacy, to inclusion, to visual power within the most scrutinized family in the world. And Meghan Markle wanted them, badly. To some, it looked like ambition. To others, entitlement. But behind those quiet requests, often cloaked in politeness and plausible deniability, was a deeper hunger. Not just for jewelry, but for something far more elusive. Acceptance. And yet, each time she reached for it, the door was already locked. The first ask, behind the Tiara Gate incident. Let's start with the one everyone thinks they know. In the lead-up to Meghan and Harry's 2018 wedding, an early rift formed. Not between Meghan and Catherine. Not even between Meghan and the Queen, but between Meghan and royal protocol. The infamous Tiara Gate. Here's what most people remember. Meghan wanted a particular tiara. The Queen had reservations. Angela Kelly, the Queen's longtime dresser and gatekeeper of the royal jewels, allegedly stepped in to slow things down. But what really happened? According to palace sources, Meghan had her eye on an emerald-encrusted tiara, one steeped in Eastern European history. Rarely worn, bold, dramatic. Perfect for a statement. But when the request came through official channels, something odd happened. The origin of the tiara wasn't completely clear. There were lingering legal questions about its provenance. Translation? They couldn't confirm if it had been taken during a time of war. The Queen intervened. She offered alternatives. Meghan refused, at first. And Harry? He allegedly exploded. What Meghan wants, Meghan gets, he was reported to have shouted. Spoiler, she didn't get it. She wore the Queen Mary bandeau tiara instead, a piece selected after intervention. Elegant, refined, but not what she asked for. It was the first visible no Meghan encountered in royal life. But it wouldn't be the last. Request number 2, the mystery of the brooch. After her marriage, Meghan was given access to certain pieces, mostly modest. A pair of earrings here, a bracelet there. But the real vault? That remained closed. Still, that didn't stop her from trying. In late 2018, ahead of her first solo engagement representing the Queen in the Commonwealth, Meghan reportedly requested a specific brooch, a crescent-shaped piece worn by Princess Diana during her final royal tour. The reason? She said it was symbolic of bridging East and West, a nod to her multicultural roots and the future of the monarchy. Sounds noble, right? But insiders raised eyebrows. The piece wasn't Diana's to give. It belonged to the Crown collection and hadn't been worn since her death. And more importantly, it had never been loaned to anyone outside the direct line of succession. Her request was denied, politely, but this time, there was no alternative offered, just silence. And to Meghan, that silence felt like rejection. Request number 3, the pearl necklace no one saw coming. Fast forward to 2020. The Sussexes had already left royal duties. The Oprah interview loomed in the distance. But before the world heard her version of events, Meghan had one final, surprising request. It came through a back channel. Her team reached out to a royal contact in early March of that year, inquiring whether Meghan could borrow or be symbolically gifted a strand of pearls once worn by the Queen Mother. Yes, the very same set we've been talking about. Why? To wear at a Women's Empowerment Summit in Los Angeles, an event that would be live-streamed globally. A way, they argued, to honor the Queen's legacy from abroad. But the pearls in question weren't available. Not because they were damaged, not because they were misplaced, because they had already been boxed. For Catherine. And here's the chilling twist. According to one source, the timing of Meghan's request arrived after Zara had already placed the pearls in Catherine's hands. Meaning, Meghan was too late. Whether that was an accident or a strategic power play depends on who you ask. But the optics? Devastating. Catherine was now the visible heir to the Queen Mother's feminine legacy. Meghan was, yet again, the one denied access. Why did Meghan keep asking? Here's where the story gets psychological. Was Meghan truly obsessed with jewelry? Or was it what the jewelry represented? Because in the royal family, jewels are far more than status symbols. They are permissions, endorsements, visual affirmations of power, trust, and inclusion. To wear the Queen's jewels is to wear her favor. To be entrusted with a family heirloom is to be wrapped in history. Meghan knew this. She came from a world where status is visible, where red carpets and designer labels mean something. And in royal life, there is no louder signal of hierarchy than jewelry. She saw it with Diana. She saw it with Kate. So when she was given standard, fair, simple pieces, with no history attached, it stung. Even if no one said it out loud, the message was clear. You are not yet one of us. But it wasn't just the royals saying no. There's another layer here. Angela Kelly, the Queen's longtime confidant and stylist, the quiet gatekeeper of the Queen's wardrobe and her jewelry vault. She didn't like being told what to do, especially by new blood. And insiders suggest Meghan rubbed her the wrong way from the start. One staffer recalls Angela saying, "I've worked decades to protect these pieces. I won't hand them over to someone who doesn't understand what they stand for." That's why some believe it wasn't the Queen herself denying Meghan's requests, it was Angela. But the Queen? She never corrected it. She let the gate stand. And Meghan never got through. The ripple effects inside the family. Each denied request widened the rift. Harry saw it as snobbery. Meghan saw it as cruelty. William saw it as protocol. And Catherine? She stayed silent. But Zara? Zara was watching. And when Meghan made that final request for the Queen Mother's pearls, it wasn't just a no. It was a line in the sand. One that Zara decided to draw herself, by making sure those pearls were seen, photographed, and worn by the woman she believed truly upheld the legacy, Catherine. But Meghan's next move would shock them all. Because the story doesn't end with a denied email or a velvet box. It continues with Meghan taking matters into her own hands. Crafting a response so subtle, so perfectly timed, it almost looked accidental. But was it? Was it tribute or retaliation? Because just weeks later, she would appear in pearls. Not the royal kind, but just similar enough to raise questions. And when she walked into that Los Angeles gala, head held high, flanked by Hollywood royalty, the whisper across royal watchers was immediate. Is she mocking the monarchy or mourning her exclusion? But what Meghan didn't know was that Zara had one final trick up her sleeve. A message Meghan would never forget. And it wouldn't come in the form of an email. It would come through a child. What if Meghan's greatest rival wasn't Catherine Middleton, but the next generation already waiting in the wings? She didn't see it coming. Not because she wasn't watching. She was. Obsessively. Every photo. Every outfit. Every pearl. She'd been watching Catherine. Watching the royals. Watching Zara. But she wasn't watching Charlotte. And that's where Zara decided to strike. Because when all else fails, when emails are denied, appearances are mirrored, and headlines start to tilt the wrong way, what better way to lock in a legacy than through the one thing Meghan doesn't have access to anymore? The future of the monarchy. The Charlotte plan. It started as a whisper. Zara had spoken to Anne, and had spoken to Charles. And between them, a quiet plan began to form. Not a press campaign. Not a social event. Something far more powerful. An image. A single photo. Planned. Choreographed. But appearing natural. Princess Charlotte. Aged 9. Wearing a navy coat, patent shoes, and her hair pinned back with a single, unmistakable accessory. A pearl hair clip. Not plastic. Not child's play. Real pearls. One of the Queen Mother's private collection. Repurposed into a subtle but meaningful adornment for the next generation. And the occasion? The Queen Mother's annual memorial wreath laying. A moment of reflection, tradition, and now symbolism. Because there she was. Charlotte walking beside her mother. Catherine in full composure. Charlotte quietly mirroring her posture, her pace. And on her left side, glinting in the morning sun, those pearls. It wasn't a tiara. It wasn't grand. But it said everything. The internet catches fire. The reaction was immediate. Charlotte wears Queen Mother's pearls. Royal legacy secured. Zara's masterstroke. Passing power to Catherine and Charlotte, not to the exiled branch. Royal watchers on Twitter dubbed it the Pearl Pass. A generational shift photographed in real time. And Meghan? She saw it. Multiple sources confirmed that Meghan's team flagged the photo within minutes of it appearing on the royal family's website. It was picked up by global outlets. Not just in the UK, but in France, Germany, Australia, South Africa. The caption? Princess Charlotte, in a pearl clip once worn by Queen Elizabeth, pays tribute to her great-great-grandmother. And that changed everything. Because while Meghan had hoped to reshape the royal narrative from the outside, this move rewrote it from the inside. The cost of the no. Let's go back to the core of the issue. Why did Meghan want the pearls? Not for wealth. Not for vanity. For validation. She believed, truly, that wearing them would cement her as part of the legacy she'd married into. But the royal family doesn't give validation on request. It gives it on behavior. And whether fair or not, Meghan's exit, her interviews, her lawsuits, made the palace close ranks. The more she reached, the tighter they closed. It was like watching someone bang on a door they had already locked from the inside. And the pearls? They became the symbol of that final no. The replica appearance. And then, Meghan did what no one expected. She copied it. 3 weeks after the Charlotte appearance, Meghan was seen in Montecito, leaving a private luncheon, wearing a dark blue coat, her hair pinned back with what appeared to be pearls. Not the same clip. Not even real, as far as most could tell, but just close enough to cause a stir. Was it a nod? A dig? A coincidence? The Daily Mail called it a fashion clapback. Page 6 said Meghan mirrors Charlotte in defiant pearl look. But it didn't land. Why? Because Catherine's pearls are passed down. Meghan's were purchased. And the difference between legacy and luxury is that one carries memory. The other carries price tags. Zara's silent victory. Zara didn't speak. She didn't need to. She let Charlotte do the talking. Let Catherine walk the walk. Let the pearls do their quiet work. And inside the palace, a phrase reportedly started floating around. First in whispers, then in jokes. Let them wear pearls. A sarcastic twist on Marie Antoinette's line. A dig. A message. Meghan may have California. She may have Spotify. She may have Netflix. But the crown? That stayed in London. And the pearls? They stayed in the family. A pattern emerges. Meghan's repeated requests for royal heirlooms were never just about jewelry. They were about power, access, recognition, respect. But in the monarchy, those things aren't earned by asking. They're earned by serving. And Catherine, silent, smiling, enduring, earned them the hard way. Zara saw it. and responded the only way she knew how. Not with a quote, not with a press release. With pearls, passed hand to hand, mother to daughter, legacy to future. And just when it seemed like the storm had passed, another request arrived, one no one expected, one that threatened to reignite every wound the family had tried to quietly bury. And this time, it didn't come through a royal aide, or a stylist, or even Meghan herself. It came from Harry. And what he asked for would shake the firm once more. What happens when the person least interested in the spotlight ends up holding the power to protect the monarchy from itself? Zara Tindall never asked to be royal. She was born into it, drenched in royal blood, trained in royal silence, yet allowed to walk the tightrope of public anonymity. No HRH, no palace apartment, no official title. And yet, Zara may be the most quietly dangerous woman in Windsor. Because unlike those who married in, or those obsessed with modernizing the firm through press tours and photo ops, Zara's loyalty doesn't shout. It moves, deliberately, silently, unforgivingly. And when Meghan Markle crossed the invisible line that separates fashion from legacy, Zara didn't hesitate. She chose her side. She drew it in pearls. But to understand how Zara became the crown's fiercest protector, we need to go back. The no-title decision that changed everything. It started with Princess Anne. When Zara was born in 1981, she could have been styled Lady Zara, like her cousins. Or even Princess Zara, had her mother insisted. But Anne made a radical choice. One that would echo decades later in how Zara operated behind palace walls. She declined titles for her children. Why? Anne's answer has always been pointed and brief. We didn't want to saddle them with it. But behind that simplicity was a strategy. Anne knew the game. She'd seen how titles turned into chains, how media preyed on princesses, how scandal stuck harder to those with HRHs in front of their names. So she raised Zara as both royal and not, Windsor by blood, free by design. And that freedom? It became Zara's greatest weapon, a childhood in two worlds. Zara's early years were split between palace corridors and muddy stables. She could curtsy with grace one morning, then fall face first in horse manure that afternoon. She went to Gordonstown, then to Exeter University. She dated rugby stars, drove her own truck, partied in jeans while others wore tiaras. And yet, she was always there, at Trooping the Color, at Sandringham, at Balmoral. She didn't need to be invited. She was expected, because while she didn't carry a title, she carried something more valuable, trust. And in the royal family, trust is rarer than diamonds. The Queen's favorite grandchild? It's been whispered for years. And while the Queen never officially declared favorites, those closest to her didn't need her to say it. She adored Zara. Why? Because Zara never embarrassed her, never sold her story, never took a shortcut. She trained as an equestrian at the highest level, represented Great Britain at the Olympics, won a silver medal, with the Queen watching from the stands. And when asked how she felt about her granddaughter's victory, Her Majesty simply smiled and said, "Very proud." That was all. But behind closed doors, Zara was reportedly one of the few people allowed to speak to the Queen with complete, unfiltered honesty. No curtsies, no ceremony, just straight talk. And that's what made her dangerous. Because she didn't need the crown. The crown needed her. Zara and Harry, the broken bond. Before Meghan, Zara and Harry were close. Very close. Cousins, yes, but more like siblings in mischief. They partied together, shared inside jokes at weddings, got drunk at club events. Zara was reportedly one of the first people Harry introduced Meghan to during their early courtship. She was open, curious, protective, but things changed fast. Not long after the engagement, insiders say Zara picked up on something that rubbed her the wrong way. It wasn't Meghan's Americanness. It wasn't the fame. It was the control. Zara reportedly told a friend, "She doesn't want to fit in. She wants to stand out. That's not how this works." Tension brewed. Conversations grew shorter. And when the wedding rolled around, Zara showed up with a smile, but not the warmth. Photos captured her standing slightly apart, speaking less, watching more. And in the months that followed, the distance grew. Not because Zara hated Meghan, but because she sensed danger. The kind of danger that doesn't scream. The kind that poisons silently. The kind that wears a smile and breaks the system from the inside. The pearl moment that sealed her loyalty. When Meghan requested access to the Queen Mother's pearls, Zara was done waiting. She made her move. Not out of jealousy, not out of pettiness, out of protection. Protection for Catherine, for Charlotte, for the future of the monarchy. Because Zara knew what few others did. Those who don't respect the past can never be trusted with the future. And Meghan, despite her statements, her interviews, her insistence on honoring the Queen, had repeatedly disrespected the structures that built her. So Zara acted, and when she placed the pearls into Catherine's hands, it wasn't a royal moment. It was a military maneuver, a transfer of responsibility, of armor, of inheritance. And in doing so, Zara locked Catherine into the role of future matriarch, not just with a smile, but with symbols. The quiet meetings with King Charles. Behind the scenes, Zara has always had a seat at the table. Not officially, not publicly, but whenever Charles holds private family summits, especially the ones without press, Zara is there. One aide recalls a particularly tense meeting at Sandringham, months after the Oprah interview. Harry wasn't present, neither was Meghan, but the topic was all about them. Zara reportedly stood up after 20 minutes of hedging and said, "Enough. We can't keep feeding the fire and wondering why it spreads. Lock the doors, stop the access, and move on." Charles didn't argue, and nodded. William clenched his jaw. And the meeting ended shortly after. That's how Zara operates. Not through diplomacy, but through decisiveness. Because to her, the monarchy isn't just a family, it's an institution. And institutions need guardians. Why Zara's loyalty isn't blind. Some people assume Zara's loyalty to the crown makes her cold, that she's cutthroat, unemotional, brutal. But that's not the full picture. Zara is fiercely loyal because she knows what this family has endured. She watched the Queen hold a nation together during war. She watched Diana suffer. She watched her own mother, and face down public ridicule and raise 2 stable children without scandal. She knows what it costs to stay upright in a world designed to rip royalty apart. So when someone tries to shortcut their way to influence, be it through interviews, podcasts, or strategic leaks, Zara doesn't flinch. She closes the gate. But then Harry called. After all the fallout, after the Oprah drama, after the pearl gifting, Harry made a private call to Zara. The two hadn't spoken in over a year. Not properly. But this time, Harry had a simple request. Can we talk? And what came next would push Zara to her limit. Because behind the apology, behind the charm, behind the cousinly memories, Harry made a proposal, and it had to do with Meghan, and legacy, and jewelry, and one specific piece they were hoping to borrow for a foundation launch in America. A piece that had never left the vault. A piece that once belonged to Queen Elizabeth herself. And Zara? She took a long breath, looked at her phone, and without raising her voice, simply said, "Not everything is for sale, H. Not even to you." Click. The silence that followed wasn't just the end of a phone call. It was the end of an era. And what she did next, no one expected. What do you do when your own family tests the very values you were raised to protect? For Zara Tindall, the answer was simple. You protect the crown, even if it means drawing a line between blood and betrayal. Because after that phone call with Harry, after the plea